Again, I think I may have taken a topic that would take probably about a lifetime to decipher. Ma'u Adam, what is the human being? See, it's difficult to say it because if you say what is man, you might think I'm being a misogynist and only referring to males. Ha'adam, in the language of Chazal, always refers to men and women. Ha'adam ki yakriv korban can also refer not only to Jews but to Goyim as well. Yes. When it says Ha'adam, Ha'adam is the Adam. And throughout the Tanakh, we have human beings musing on the meaning of what they are and the value that exists in a human life, separate from what it can produce, separate from what it earns, separate from what it does. Does it have any essential value? And if it does have an essential value, what is that value? We will not look at every place in the Tanakh where this is dealt with. We will instead look at two Mizmorei Tehillim that ask the same questions but in different circumstances. And one time, in the case of Iyov, where I only chose one small excerpt to illustrate. But as of course, almost half the book of Iyov muses on what is man. Why is this? Why is this going on here? So we will begin with Tehillim in this case, and then go back to Bereshit to try to get a sense of it. In Perek Chet of Tehillim, we have a very interesting situation. You will note, and I highlighted this for you, that aside from the Ktovet, which is the opening, and the opening is not the body of the Mizmor itself, it's nothing more than telling you either what kind of Mizmor it is or who the author is. And in this case, Lamnatseach Halagitit Mizmor LeDavid, which is almost like writing a concerto for the piano written by David. But the line that actually begins this is the way it actually ends. So you've got bookends, if you like, the top and the bottom, or you have the heavens and the earth. And in between, you have a human being stuck betwixt and between. Hashem Adonenu, ma adir shimcha bechol haaretz. Looking upwards, and you can almost imagine David laying on an knoll of grass, looking at the expanse of the stars, and seeing as much as a human being can see what looks like infinity. And there he asks, Hashem Adonenu, ma adir, how majestic, how strong, how powerful your what? Your name. Because at best, I know him by the name, but I don't know him. So I can see him throughout the land. Asher tna hodcha al hashamayim. And you've only placed your hod on the heavens, which is not down here on earth. Malbim explains that the difference between hadar and hod, or adar and hod, and adar being related to hadar, is that hadar is external beauty. And hod is internal beauty, or its internal meaning, what it really is. Maybe up in the heavens, they know hodcha, your essence, what you really are, perhaps is up there. Down here, I can see at best your reflection, and what then do I see? It's in fact, I am trying to understand the artist by looking at what he made. And the distant part that I can see is the stars. So he tells us as follows. I've referred to verse 4. I'm not going to deal with every issue here. Ki yar'eh shamecha, when I see your heavens, ma'aseh etzbeotecha, the work of your fingers. Yareach, the kochavim, the moon, the stars, asher konanta, that you placed them. And there is a clause here that's left hanging. When I see that, breathless, מה אנוש כי תזכרנו ובן אדם כי תפקדנו. What is mere enosh that you would remember him? Uven adam ki tifkedeno. And a human being that you not remember, not even reckoned, but that you appointed him. That you appointed him, that you gave him a tafkid, that you gave him a role. And clearly he's referring to the fact that when Hashem created Adam, he told him, Urdu bidgat hayam, you shall have dominion over the fish, over the birds, over everything here on earth, and placed him in Gan Eden le'ovda u'leshomra, to cultivate it, to develop it, and to preserve it. Not to keep it as it was, but to make it better. That's essentially what he did. So when he's looking at the grand expanse of all creation and looks at the planets therefore and sees, as it were, God's fingers, he feels tiny. And he refers first to himself as Enosh. Now you will remember that we have Adam and Chava, and they have two sons, Cain and Hevel. And Cain murders Hevel and is banished, Na venad, and only later on do they have a son, Shet. As if God had given me a replacement. But imagine the feelings of the first parents on earth. Thereafter, we have the generation of Enosh. Now, in Ivrit, Enosh, Machala Anusha, is a fatal disease. In fact, Enosh means nothing more than mortal. And from that comes the word Ish, Isha, and clearly doesn't give us a sense of their divinity, but at best their mortality. They will die. Ma enosh, what then is mere mortal, that you would remember him? Uven Adam, not Adam, or Adam, but Ben Adam, the son of man, because Adam was created by God's hands himself. Unlike all other generations that were made by man, woman, and given a divine soul. So Ben Adam is a step away from the first human being that was created. And in modern parlance, when we want to say that somebody is a mensch, we say, Hu Ben Adam. Hu Ben Adam. And when I want to indicate that he's nothing more than mortal, it's Enosh. And at the same time he adds, feeling so tiny, Vatachsireu me'at me'elokim. And you made him just a little bit less than, and you'll notice that I wrote it as Elokim, because I am following the Shita of Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who says it actually means God. You made him a little bit less than God. Where many Mefolshim say that the word Elokim in this case means the angels. A little bit less than the angels, as being, if you like, immortal beings. And why then does he insist that it's Elokim himself? Because there's something that man has that the angels don't. Of course, he has a body which the angels don't, though they can take human form. And of course, he dies and they don't. So he's got that. But he has freedom of choice, which they don't have, says Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. And while he has imperfect knowledge, they are compelled to do whatever it is that they're sent to do, and they have no freedom at all. Whereas man has freedom to choose both good and also to choose evil. And in that sense, he is deemed just a step below the Rebbeinu Shalom himself. V'chavod ve'adar te'atrehu. And you crowned him with hadar, with beauty. And kavod, which most people think of as honor, means your essential self. It's what we call the woman of substance, is kavod. Or as the British understood, I give you my word of honor, because without my honor, I'm but a beast. Because kavod is another word for the soul, the divine soul that you have. And that's why David HaMelech in other places can say, Ura kavodi, awaken my honor, my soul, awaken Ura HaNevel, awaken the liar, I will sing to God. Or why you can say, Leman yezamercha kavod velo yidom, so that my kavod will sing to you and never be silenced. Because one's kavod is not something given to him by other people. It's not that silly thing that we think of as kavod. Kavod is what makes you valuable, as opposed to kal. It's the substance. And that substance is not something tangible. That was the crown given to us by God. It's the chelek eloka mimal. And Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch and the Malbim both point out that the hadar, since it's the external beauty, refer also to the beauty and even the sanctity of the human body, formed by God himself. Not the dualism that we might think of in the Christian world, as if the body itself were somehow tameh, but that in fact the body is the instrument to be used by the neshama, as man is the instrument to be used by God to complete Maaseh Bereshit. And that's why when you're making Kiddush on Friday night, you say that, you end it with a word that's a hanging clause. Asher bara Elokim la'asot. God created to make, to do. To make what? It's as if he stopped creation at a certain point and said, okay, now you have a go at it. Let me see what you make of this world. It's yours to complete, yours to elevate, yours to sanctify, or chas v'shalom, yours to destroy. V'tamshilehu b'maaseh yadecha, and you made him moshel, you made him ruler over all the works of your hand. Kol shata, remember his name was Shet? All existence is under his feet. And suddenly you get that picture that you often see in Kabbalistic writings where you see a human being standing with his legs akimbo, his arms this way, and a crown on his head. Ha-Adam B'Tselem Elokim. All this is yours. Tzoneh ve'alafim kulam, I have the sheep and I've got the rams, all of them. V'gam b'hamot sadai, and even the wild beasts, not the domesticated ones. Tzipor shamayim udgei hayam. Over orchot yamim. Who crosses the pathways of the seas. Well, who crosses the pathways of the seas? Can't be dgei, because then it would say ovrim. Tzipor alone could, because it's singular, unless it's man himself who imitates the creation, imitates the birds, and has learned even how to fly and cross the seas by building boats to take dominion over all this earth. And with that he ends, Hashem Adonenu Ma'adir Shimcha B'chol ha'aretz. So while this looks like a song, a paean to God, it is truly a hymn for man and the greatness of the human being. Comes the Malbim and takes the word V'tamshilehu as not the word Urdu bidgat hayam, laredet, but rather that it also comes from the word mashal. And a mashal is a parable. The human being, he says, is a parable for all creation. For all the forms of all beings are included in the human being. He says, and everything you see, nikbitzu bo ba'adam, they've all been gathered in the human being. And therefore, he's called a microcosm. This is the olam hakatan that represents the olam hagadol. The Adam hakatan that represents Kiviyochon, the Adam hagadol, God himself, in whose image he was created. In Kuf Mem Dalet, in the 144th Psalm, we find the same questions asked, but under completely different circumstances. David is at war, and he thanks God, Baruch Hashem Tzuri, Baruch Hashem that formed me, HaMelamed Yadai Lakrav, who taught my hands to do battle. It's Beotai, my fingers, to go to war. But in this situation, he also suddenly feels his vulnerability. And he knows full well that death is maybe a small little arrow that whizzes right by him. Magini uvochasiti, you've been my shield, I've hidden behind you. Haroded ami tachtai, and you gave me dominion, putting my people, my nation, underneath me. So he's now a king, leading his people to war. Hashem ma'adam vatedaehu. My God, what is man that you know him? Notice that the word ladat can also mean v'ha'adam yada et chava ishto, that you love him, that you care about him. Ben Enosh, the son of a mortal human being, v'techshavehu, and that you deem him important, chashuv, that you think of him and that you've attributed importance. Harei adam lehevel dama. Why man is compared instead to hot breath. Right? And the last breath you take, you begin to decompose. Yamav ketzel over. His days are like a fleeting shadow. Hashem hatshamecha, God, tilt your heavens, v'tered, and come down. Ga beharim, just touch the mountains, and they'll go up in smoke. You can almost imagine this volcanic activity. Feeling at this moment completely vulnerable, completely weak, and in the hands of God, going to battle knowing that in a moment he's finished, and at the same time daring to ask, Ptseni shlach yadcha mimarom, send your hand from above. Ptseni v'hatzileni, rescue me, get me out of here. Mimayim rabim, from these waters, he imagines himself in a torrent. Miyad b'nei nechar, from the hands of these alien people. Asher pihem diber shav, whose mouths speak not. Emptiness, vanity. V'yeminam, and their right hand, the hand of an oath, by which one takes an oath, is yemin sheker, is a right hand of falsehood. Look at suddenly how different, instead of a paean of man, he sees man, God almost leading him by the nose to do things at the price of his own death. And then we find a third circumstance, Eov, a man whose suffering he just can't explain. He certainly did nothing to deserve this. And if you didn't know that, the narrator already made it very clear from the very beginning that he is an ish tam v'yireh Elokim. He's a righteous, perfect man who fears God, did nothing wrong, and certainly did not deserve to have all of his possessions taken away from him, to lose all of his children, to suffer untold pain. And there, suffering as he does, physical pain, you can imagine a person who essentially has a terminal disease and wants it finally to end, and there isn't enough morphine to make it stop. So he says, Gam ani lo yachsach pi. I too won't withhold my mouth, knowing that a lot of people blabber. They blabber when they say things like, why me? Why am I having this, kilu, and why not you? But in his case, he says, I can't keep quiet any longer. Adabera b'tzar ruchi. I will speak in the agony of my heart. Asicha b'mar nafshi. I will bespeak the bitterness of my soul. Hayamani im tanin. Am I the ocean? Am I a Leviathan? Ki tasim alai mishmar, that you need to watch over me to prevent me from what? Washing over the land? Because he describes that in fact God doesn't allow the ocean, right? It tries to constantly swallow the land, the coast, and it keeps being pulled back. And the Leviathan, a big beast that swallows so many other little fish, needs to be reined in. It does not reproduce much to keep it from actually killing everybody in the ocean. Am I that ocean? Am I that big? Am I that strong that you need to watch over me? Masti. Says Nimis, I am sick of this. Lo leolam echyeh, I won't live forever. Chadal mimeni, so leave me alone. Ki hevel yamai, for my days are nothing but hot air. I'll die anyway. Why torture me? Ma enosh ki tigadlenu v'ketashite le'av libecha. What is mere mortal man that you would make him so big and then crash him down? That you would pay attention to him. V'tifkedenu livkarim lirgaim tifchenenu. And you appoint him morning, come morning, one morning, another morning, for a man who doesn't want morning to come. And by minute, you test me. Kama lo tishe mimeni. Not lama. How long? How much won't you let go of me? Lo tarpeni ad bil'iru ki. You don't leave me alone long enough to swallow my own spit. Chatati ma'ifalach. And if I sinned, what damage can I cause you? Notzer ha'adam. And that's a double entendre. Notzer is shomer, the man that watches the human being. But notzer is also from the word sarot, that troubles man. Lama samtani li mifgalach. Why did you make me your target? Ve'yeh alai lemasa, and I've become a burden to myself. Uma lo tisa pishi. And won't you bear my sin? Is it too much for you to carry? V'ta'avir et avoni. And won't you look over any wrongdoing I've done? If you won't, I wish you wouldn't. Ki ata le'afar eshkav. So I would lay down in the dust. V'shichartani, and should you come looking for me in the morning, ve'ineni, I won't be here anymore. Leave me alone. Let me die. It is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. And all of these are asking, what is man? What is man? So to understand it a little bit better, we need to go flip the page and go to the very beginning. Vayomer Elokim, only in the creation of the human being, in the first 6 days, does God indicate intention before he actually does it. All along it says, Vayomer, may God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God looked at the light and he saw that it was good. Here there's two things that stand differently. A, Vayomer Elokim na'aseh Adam. Before he actually does it, he indicates intention. And we will make a human being b'tzalmenu kidmutenu. Oh, such difficult words and such a difficult concept. With the purpose of vayirdu, so that they'll have dominion and control over the fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the land, and all that creeps and crawls on earth. And the next thing you hear is Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam b'tzalmo. God created man in his image. And in case you don't know what image it is, and you'll say in his own image, it says immediately, B'tselem Elokim bara oto. He created him in the image of God. Zachar u'nekeva bara otam. So, of course, you got a problem here because it's verses, is it a singular? Is it a plural? So Ha'adam, the primeval man that was created, was both Adam, was both male and female, an androgynous creature created in the image of God. We have here several problems, theological problems, and that is, to whom is God speaking? Na'aseh Adam. Who is we? Who is we? So it has been suggested by some of our early Rishonim that it's the plural, the majestic plural. As the Queen says, we are not amused, and speaks in the plural. The only problem with that is that right afterwards, God speaks perfectly well in the singular. So you have to make up your mind, which is it? Rashi takes the position of one medrash that says the Torah is not afraid of the question. It's meant to teach you derech eretz, and that is that even God kiviyachol informs the governed and takes advice from his court, the malachim, though he doesn't need it. And in case you make the mistake and think that there were partners to God's making Adam, comes the next verse and tells you they didn't do anything, it was only God. Elokim bara et Adam. But what can I speak about the form, the image, tselem, dmut, for a God who's invisible? Who every day when you say, Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra, he has no shape, right? He has no end, he has no beginning. You cannot, and over again, the Torah tells us, you shall make no image of him. When you stood at Har Sinai, you did not see any visual picture. What then is the tselem udmut? Now you're really confusing me. And the second verse reiterates that issue, that it's created in the tselem. Ramban tries to resolve this by saying that God spoke to the earth and all the creatures thereof, not merely to inform them that he's now appointing the king, as Rabbi Shimshon Raphael says, but rather to make them partners in creation of man, who was, we will hear later on in chapter 2, formed by the earth and by God together. So in that sense, the body came from earth and the soul came from God. And therefore it was Na'aseh. We'll do this together. Our problem is, what then does the word tselem Elokim mean? That he's in the image of God. Some say that he was given conscious intelligence. It's not just that he knows, but that he knows that he knows. And self-consciousness. And with that came the ability to reason and to draw conclusions from one thing to another and grow in the process, understanding and knowing more, sufficient to have dominion over this earth, to improve it, to develop it, as well as to safeguard it. That's essentially what he gave him. Others tell us that what he gave him was not merely rational or even consciousness, but freedom of choice, and freed him. And that made him, if you like, a tzel, says the Abarbanel, of God. Tselem, tzel, like a shadow of God. Moreover, if God would be like a source of light cast upon man, he would be casting a shadow. So what man does here on earth is supposed to be a reflection of what God does in the universe. We later on hear that this thing that he created, he named Ha'adam. Many believe that's because of the word Adama, because he comes from the soil. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch strongly opposes this view and says that he comes from the word domeh. He is in the similitude of God, and he is able to draw images. He's an image maker in his words. All of his words are essentially metaphors and similes. And he sees comparison to one thing and another. And the ability to draw comparisons between one thing and another is precisely his creative imagination, coming from the word image. It's the dimayon, his imagination. Man, though limited in time and space, has a mind that can remember the past, live in the present, and project a future that does not yet exist. For all fans of science fiction, you know that science fiction eventually becomes fact. If he couldn't fly, he flies, right? Jules Verne was once considered science fiction. Around the Earth in 80 days. How about around the Earth in 24 hours? Right? For man to be able to go and conquer the stars, for man to conquer the depths of the sea, for man to be able to conquer disease. All of these come from his ability to draw analogies and see similitudes. And that's why he's called Ha'adam. And while he doesn't cite this, you will notice the following in the second chapter. אלה תולדות השמיים והארץ בהי ברעם, ביום עשות השם אלוקים, ארץ ושמיים. This is the chronicles, this is the story, this is the way heaven and earth gave birth to other things. וכל שיח השדה טרם יהיה בארץ. And there was no yet any bushes growing. The seeds were there, but nothing else. וכל עשב השדה טרם יצמח, and the grass did not yet grow. כי לא המטיר השם אלוקים על הארץ, for God had not yet brought any rain down on earth. So everything there is in potential and not yet in fruition. ואדם אין לעבוד את האדמה. And there was no yet Adam to till the Adama. Hitherto, it said, והארץ תוצא, עשב. והארץ תוצא, כל רמס. the term up until now for earth was used aretz. The word Adama does not figure until we first introduce the word Adam. And therefore, Adama is drawn from the word Adam and not the other way around, says Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. I would argue that both are correct because the human being is caught betwixt and between. On the one hand, Adameh Elyon, I would want to be just like the one on high. And on the other hand, Afarata ve'ela afarta shuv, you are but dust and you will return to the dust. In the 5th chapter of Bereshit, again, it's almost like story 1, story 2, and I'm not going to go into Bloom's notion of author E and author J, except that in fact the Torah is telling me, let's look at it this way, and now let's look at it that way, because you can't tell both sides at the same time. זה ספר תולדות אדם. ביום ברו אלוקים אדם בדמות אלוקים עשה אותו. This is the story of the human being. On the day that God created him, he made him in the image of God. Zachar u'nekeva bera'am, he created them male and female. Vayevarech otam, and he blessed them. Vayikra et shmam Adam, and he called their name. You see, male and female, Adam. Biyom hibaram, on the day that they were created, meaning before there actually is Adamah, before there's actually soil to till. Later on, of course, the Parshat Bereshit is the story of the first sin, the first murder, the first exile. And it ends with the fact that God looks at the human beings that he created. And what does he see? Ki yetzer ha'adam, lev ha'adam, ra minurav. His entire inclination seems to be ra. Now, ra does not mean evil, because evil is an essence. Bait ra'ua is a house falling apart. And therefore it means to break, to decompose, to shatter. Very much like, have you ever seen 2-year-olds playing with Lego, and along comes another little 2-year-old, and with a gleam of the devil in his eyes, goes and gives it a kick and breaks it. Yetzer lev adam ra minurav, and that play on that word ra minurav. And Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says, neurav is kishu mitnaer, when he shakes loose and cuts the umbilical cord and wants to show how independent he is. When he learns how, right at the age of 2, to say no. No. And to declare his independence. And then the Torah continues with an anthropomorphism to speak about how sad God was. That those are the choices that human beings make, because we know what a human being can do. Right? It was Primo Levi who titled his book, Echo Homo, This is Man. Bemet, that is man. Who? The Nazi? Zehu Adam. Or is the person starving giving his last piece of bread to a friend? Echo homo. Which is man? Both. And then what does he see? The next line is, and there was Noach, matzachen beinei Hashem. Because in spite of all the evil, in spite of everything that we read, there is Noach, ish tzadik, tamim, b'dorotav. There is only needs to be one human being to prove that the human being can be B'Tselem Elokim. After the flood, after it is all over, God commands Noach, and you know the Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach. And amongst them, he indicates the follows. He gives them permission to eat meat. But he tells them in the 9th chapter, and if you will please look carefully at verse 3, you can eat any living being. No problem. This is before kashrus. You understand? Of course, what can't you do? You cannot eat something that is still alive, like swallowing live oysters. That's called evel min achai. Or cutting a limb off of an animal. Or doing what the Maasai do, where they bleed their cattle and drink it. And let the cow live for another day. You understand? To be bled again. Damo lo tochelu, don't eat its blood, because the blood is seen as the life force. And then adds, Ve'ach et dimchem lenafshotechem edrosh miyad kol chaya. And in the similar vein, I will hold accountable any animal that consumes you. And I will also hold accountable umiyad ha'adam miyad ish echav edrosh et nefesh ha'adam. I will hold accountable any human being that takes the life of another ha'adam. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. A person who spills the blood of another human being, his blood will be shed. Ki b'tselem elokim asa et ha'adam. For God made the human being in the image of God. This will defy the issue that after the sin, there was no longer a tselem, Elokim. But even after the sin, and even after the flood, another human life is B'Tselem, Elokim, forbidding the killing of any human being that has the value of God's imprint on it. That it is, in fact, holy in and of itself. That holiness, that sanctity, comes from both the fact that the human being has a freedom of choice, and according to Harav Soloveitchik, it is that struggle between the Adama and the Domeh, between the physical desires and the rational thought, between the free volition and will of man and his desires and wishes, that makes him a hero. Now, the original philosophers, be they Rambam, Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, believed that there can be harmony between physical desires and reason. They didn't see this as necessarily a war. And that the human being is distinguished by his intelligence and ability to reason, and raised in a proper way. And what would be the proper way? Given to understand that you are a mensch. And as a mensch, you can control yourself. By the way, that's not the prevailing educational view today. The educational view today is that children are beasts, and at best we need to make sure that they really can't cause too much damage to themselves. So what we will do is we won't preach, God forbid, restraint. We will instead supply every school with free condom dispensers. Right. And we will try to point out that Victorians and all others were hypocritical prudes and really were just as bad as we are. And you really can't entrust a human being because he's nothing more than a sophisticated monkey, and we understand what that means as a result. So we have very little trust in the human being today. The materialistic view that has prevailed and the experience of the 20th century, whether it's Nazism or communism or even capitalism, is that it's a dog-eat-dog world. The idea is not to get caught, but the human being is really rotten. And the Christian view would confirm that. The human being cannot possibly redeem himself. He must be redeemed by God himself. You understand? In the shape of God. He could not possibly help himself. That was not the position of Rambam and Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, and they managed to raise children. I don't know if you did this. Have you ever noticed that they put the candy at the checkout stand at Jewel so that when you're there with your little children, they can begin to nag the heck out of you? I found it very interesting that, all the arguments about it's going to spoil your dinner, it's going to rot your teeth, don't work. But if there's some absolutes and you say, but it's not kosher, the 2-year-old shuts up. Of course, by the time he's 3 years old, he knows that an OR is not the same thing as an OU. And so he'll tell you, oh, yes, it is. And he looks at it and he tells you, but it is kosher, so now you can't lie anymore. You understand? But he knows what is kosher and what's not, what's negotiable and what's not. Children can be trained that way, and both of them believed that one can give a child an image of himself as holy. The words of Abraham Twersky, when he does something wrong, you say, "Se passt nicht für ein Tzaddikel." A little tzaddikel like you wouldn't do this kind of thing. But if you call him dirty names and if you tell him that he's nothing but a lowlife, then that's exactly what he will be. So the human being has the ability to control his environment and control himself. He has the ability to conceive and even know his creator and rise to the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. And he can pave his way of life and make choices. And he's not predetermined. While he's limited by his physical mortal body, right? I won't ever be a basketball player. And he is prone to disease and suffering, which ultimately forces him to submit to a higher power. But while he's struggling, he attains great things. He can attain marvelous things that proves that he is Ha'adam. The moral approach, Rabbi such as Ramchal, and even Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, believe that man does not rise by virtue of his rational capacity, but by his free will. And his choices are not necessarily based on reason, but on his desires, for his intelligence has no autonomy and is enslaved to his physical needs and wants. But at the same time, he has free will. And that free will enhances the value of the good that man does through free choice and gives him ownership of his behavior. And by so doing, the capability of rising to the level of Ha'adam, a level attained only by the angels. Accordingly, as long as he's alive, man is in perpetual struggle between the body and its desires and the soul, the source of reason. But among the later Baalei Musar, such as the Saba of Slabotka, such as Reb Chaim of Volozhin, and such as some of the masters of Chassidus, such as the Sfas Emes, there was a concept called Tiferet HaAdam, the beauty of the human being. There were Rosh Yeshivas in Volozhin who insisted that Talmid Chacham have stature and dignity and walk that way and dress that way. And quoted Chazal that says that a Talmid Chacham that has a stain on his garments is worthy of the worst punishments. That one needs to respect one's body as well as one's soul, and that the two of them can work in union. And that's the greatness of the human being. Kohelet asks the question, what's the difference between man and beast? Right? Ma yitron ha'adam. What makes him? What advantage does it have? And he answers, Ayin. None. As this one dies, that one dies. As this one dies, that one dies. As this one decomposes, that one decomposes. The Sfas Emes reads it differently. What differentiates him is the ability to say no. Ayin. No. Ze kol ha'adam. So that if somebody holds a gun to your head and says, kill that man, you have the option of saying no. Even at the cost of your own life. And that's why there are 3 sins for which, right? Yehareg ve'al ya'avor. And that's why Kohelet, in fact, seems to agree at the end. And he says, Et ha'elokim yireh, ve'et mitzvotav shmor, ki ze kol ha'adam. Have an awe, not fear. That's fear of punishment. For that, you're like a little robot. Stand in awe like David, ki yireh shamecha, yireh Elokim. Observe his mitzvot. For that is all that man is. And that makes you into a mensch. The body's sanctity that makes it holy, not chas v'shalom, tameh, is dependent on the choices. So that even eating, as Chassidim will tell you, can be made into avodas Hashem. Intimate relations can be kedusha, can be holy. Ish v'isha, right? The common denominator between the two of them is this one has a yud, that one has a hey. Together they form the name of God in the proper way, in the proper time. So it's not just fasting, and it's not just denial. It's the how. It's the Oinik Shabbos. It's why eating can be made literally into the service of God. So while we daven on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Adam yesodo me'afar v'sofo le'afar, משול כחרס הנשבר, כחציר יבש, כציץ נובל, כענן קלה, כרוח נושבת, כאבק פורח, כחלום יעוף. Yeah, that's true. His brief time here is garnished, right? And you see that in Mizmor 89 and 90, where Moshe Rabbeinu says, what is our life here? 70 שנה, ואם בגבורות, 80 שנה, ורבם עמל ואבן. And a large part of them is a lot of empty work, repetitive, useless work, and a lot of falsehood. And David HaMelech himself said that he's looked at man, kol ha'adam kozev, all the people are liars and cheats, and sometimes became cynical. Right? And so we say that to the Ribono Shel Olam when we ask him for what? If that's all I am is a fleeting dream, right? A fading cloud, a puff of air. And yet I am created by you. And I dare address you, and you dare address me and ask me to do something here on earth. I have value. I was made by you. Says Arav Soloveitchik as follows: the human being inevitably swings like a pendulum between two poles. And that happened well before, he says, Adam ate from the forbidden fruit. Man is a dialectical being. An inner schism runs through his personality at every level. But this schism is not due to man's revolt against his maker, as Christian theology has preached. The Judaic view posits that the schism is willed by God as the source of man's greatness. And that's why God could turn to the angels when they said, why would you make him kulo sheker? And he says, because he has a yetzer hara, but he has the capacity to override it. He has the ability to say no and will say yes. He has the ability to be starving and give his last piece of bread and lay his life down for another. He has that capacity which makes him B'Tselem Elokim. Man is a great and creative being because he's torn by conflict and is always in a state of ontological tenseness and perplexity. And that is his greatness. That is why Reb Chaim Volozhin said, he can shake not only the foundations of this earth, but he can bring down the heavens down to earth. And that's what he admonished his students to do. Maybe that's why, after God made man, he did not say, it was good. Because whether it's good or whether it's bad, God left to Ha'adam. He made him free to choose one way or the other. And maybe, therefore, when it says, Na'aseh Adam, God is talking to us. You can make of yourself a mensch. Thank you. Any questions or comments? God, I left you all speechless? Okay. Thank you.